Yom HaShishi Echulu HaShamayim V'Yaretz V'Chol Tzom.
Breakneck Through the Bible, presented by Torch Dallas. Your host, Rabbi Epstein.
Welcome, Tom. Great to see you again. How's everything going?
Very well, Rabbi. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming here. Let's jump right into day number 2.
And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it separate between water and water." So God made the firmament and separated between the waters which were beneath the firmament and the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. So one question here, Rabbi. The word firmament, prior to studying with you and studying davening, I never heard of the word firmament before.
It's a very good question, Tom. The word firmament, and this actually, that God split the upper waters and lower waters, in my mind, is sort of one place in the Bible that I don't know exactly what it looks like, because what are the lower waters and what are the upper waters? It's like, are the lower waters subterranean waters, and the upper waters is at the seas, or is the seas the lower water, and there's some water up there that we haven't run into yet, or is it space ice that's floating in the space? So I don't know exactly what it is, but I will tell you just a few things that are quite interesting. Number one, there are 7 levels to heaven. Okay, the Talmud in Tractate Chagiga, page 12b, goes ahead and labels the 7 levels of heaven. So I'm going to tell you what they are. The first level is called the vilon, or curtain. Nothing happens within this curtain, this heaven, but in the morning it withdraws like a curtain, allowing the daylight to shine through, and in the evening it goes forth, preventing the light of the sun from reaching earth. Thus it renews the work of creation every day. So that's level 1 is vilon. Level 2 is rakia, or firmament, in which the sun, moon, stars, and constellations are suspended. Heaven number 3 is called shachakim, which stands for powders or pulverizes, in which stand millstones that grind manna for the righteous. So again, these things might be spiritual concepts. Number 4 is Zavol, temple, in which stands the heavenly Jerusalem, heavenly temple, and heavenly altar, upon which the great angelic prince Michael offers up offerings. Number 5 is the Ma'on, dwellings, in which groups of ministering angels recite songs of praise to God through the night, but remain silent by day in deference to the Jewish people. Number 6 is called Machon, foundation or establishment, in which are storehouses of snow and of hail, the attics in which harmful dew and heavy rainfalls are stored, and chamber of the whirlwind and the tempest, the grotto of smoke with its doors of fire, all of them used to retribution against the wicked. And the 7th and final one is called Aravos, willows or darkening or mixtures, in which are righteousness, justice, and charity, cachet of life, peace, and blessings, the soul of the righteous, the spirit and souls that are destined to be born, and the life-giving dew with which God will resurrect the dead. So those are the 7 heavens. I'll just read them again in orders: vilon, curtains; rakia, firmament; shachakim, powders or pulverizes; zvol is temple; ma'on is dwellings; Machon is foundation or establishment, and Aravos, willows or darkness or mixtures. So those are actually the 7 levels of heaven. So here, when the Torah goes ahead and Torah says a firmament, it's referring specifically to this level 2, heaven number 2.
So would you say in your daily life you don't often use the word firmament?
I don't. Okay. I just call it heaven.
Gotcha.
Okay, heaven, just meaning up there. Now, I will tell you, actually, just interesting thought. I actually have a student that has a bunch of patents for actually taking water out of the air. Right? That he's created a machine that almost like a dehumidifier, but this is to create water, and really you can bring water to almost anywhere in the planet because they're just taking the water out of the air. And what happens is that, like, I began to think that maybe the upper waters is what we call air, but we're busy walking around in, right? Because it's really full of water that we just don't see.
Great.
And so I thought that would be like a cool concept of the upper waters. So what's interesting is when God created the waters, the low waters were very unhappy because they wanted to be closer to God. So they wanted to come up and flood the world. And at which point in time, God told the waters, you stay below. Stay where you are, where I put you. And I'll make it that anytime the Jewish people bring offerings on their altar, it will always have salt. And that was where the concept of having salt on offerings, so all offerings in temples had salt. Because of that, I don't know if you noticed the custom, but whenever we eat bread, we dip it in salt. Make the blessing. When we make the blessing, we dip it in salt. So it comes from because our tables are considered miniature altars. They're considered miniature altars because the altar is there to serve God. When we eat, we're there to serve God. So what happens is that our tables, which are miniature altars, have salt. So we go ahead and we have salt, and anytime that we eat bread, we dip it in salt. Another reason, actually, once we're on the topic of bread and salt, very interesting. This I heard from Rabbi Becher. I don't remember if it was his own idea or he was quoting somebody else. But Rabbi Becher said that the reason that there was salt on the table, because salt is it's a compound, right? It's NaCl, right, which is sodium chloride. And what's interesting is sodium by itself is a powder, chloride by itself is a gas. And each one is poisonous on their own. So what happens is that the powder by itself would kill you, the gas by itself would kill you, but yet together they make salt, which is really what we need to live. Right? Human being needs, if we don't have salt, we're going to die. Right? We need water and salt. And so he said, but if you understand that the physical powder stands for physicality, and the gas stands for spirituality. What we're saying by dipping the bread in the salt is physicality by itself or spirituality by itself, both will kill you. If you eat them together, so then that creates a staff of life. Oh. And that's why we go dip it in salt. Alrighty, chapter 1, verse number 8, page 5 in your Stone Chumash. Go ahead, Tom, continue.
God said to the firmament heaven, and there was evening and there was morning, a second day. Okay,
now if you notice that on day 1, God saw that he said it was good. On day 3, he says it was good twice. Day 4, he says it was good. Day 5, he says it was good. Day 6, he says, and it was good. And actually, day 6, it says it was very good. But on day 2, it does not say it was good. So why does it not say, and it was good?
He's saying it was so.
It was so, right. But it
doesn't say it was good.
It doesn't say it was good. And the reason for that is because he didn't finish creating the waters till day 3. He didn't finish creating the waters until day 3. And so therefore, once he finished creating the waters on day 3, he says, and it was good. Then he talks about what came up on the earth, and he says, and it was good. So day 3 is going to have it was good twice. But day 2 doesn't have it because it wasn't complete. The creation was not complete. Another idea said, which is, I think, a very interesting idea, is that day 2 is where machlokas comes in, separation. And what's interesting, well, in day 1 he separated light and dark. It's also separation. Correct. But day 1 was separating between two things that were not alike. On day 2, it's water and water. It's the same thing. And it was divided into 2. And so therefore, since you had machlokas, since you had division is not good. So it does not say it was good on day 2.
Wow.
All right, let's move on to day number 3. Before we move on to day number 3, there's one point that I'm not sure that we mentioned last week. I want to kind of just underscore, share a thought. We talk about that we're covering the world now in 6 days, which is interesting, right? The world is 6 days. And we talked about last time that really God could have created the world in 14 billion years, which the Zohar says the world is. And it really just calls it 6 days, that these are sort of times. And what is interesting is that, so why does it say 6 days? So one way to look at it is if you take a balloon before you blow it up and you put 2 dots and half an inch from each other, how far will the dots be from each other?
Half an inch before you blow it up.
Once you blow it up, how far will the dots be from each other?
Depends how much air you put in it.
Depends how much air you put into it, right? But the more air, the further the dots are away. We are on the outside of the world, as the world is always expanding. And the universe is still expanding. I think as far as the scientists are concerned, there's a discussion among the scientists today whether it's slowing down, and therefore at some point at the top it will stop and start going back. So we'll go from a big bang to a big crunch, or whether the world will just continue expanding. And what happens is that as the world is expanding, so looking back, it looks to be 14 billion years old. But really, the world is 6 days old. Just like I said, how far apart are those 2 dots? The answer, you say, half an inch. You say, what are you talking about, half an inch? I see miles apart. And she says, yeah, because it's expanded. So till it's not expanded, it's 6 days. So really, the Torah is God saying, looking from the Big Bang forward, it's 6 days. But for us, looking back, it could be 14 billion years old. And if you actually do the math, and the world has expanded, I'm not sure how many times, 1 million times, I forgot how many millions of times, the world has expanded. And you take your 14 billion years and you bring it back, or you just keep on dividing it, you'll come back to 6 days.
So, Rabbi, you said that the scientists are unclear on whether the universe is continuing to expand or it will begin to contract at some point. What does the Torah teach?
So, very interesting. So, the Torah teaches us that the world was created for 6,000 years, as we know today. Then there'll be a 7,000th, it would be like 1,000 years of Mashiach. And then there's going to be even an 8,000th, a 9,000th, a 10,000th, in which, in my understanding of it, and so this is really where you get way into Kabbalah, into Jewish thought, into Jewish Kabbalah is Jewish mysticism, right? It's sort of that the world will sort of revert back to a place of spirituality. So there really won't be a need for the world.
As we know it.
As we know it. And so therefore, at that point in time, like, all right, who knows? But 10,000 years, we're going to be okay.
Yeah, we're not going to be around.
Last night, I was having Malav Malka, with my son, eating the meal after Shabbat. You're supposed to have a meal after Shabbat. So we were having a little meal there with his friends, and they were playing sort of like these pranks. So there's some New York station that pranks these people. And the way they were pranking these people was, and they get something like a friend calls them up and says, hey, I want you to prank my friend. And they went ahead and they pranked this guy. They went to a store. He says, hey, you work at this store? He says, yeah. I said, well, I just bought from you a solar calendar. So the guy goes, yeah. He says, well, the sun's going to burn out in 20 million years. I want my money back. You sold me a faulty, and he says, I'm happy with my product. He says, but it's false advertisement because you say it will work forever. The sun's going to burn out. And so the guy was very flustered. Oh, you've been scammed on, So it's just kind of, yes. So don't worry about it. We're going to be okay. By the way, Tom, just wanted to let you know that what I was telling you about this idea of the days looking forward, looking back, is a scientist named Dr. Gerald Schroeder, who's written a few books. Interesting fellow. Just suggest you look up some of his works.
Now, you mentioned you called him a doctor. He's also a rabbi, isn't he?
he now is a scholar. I don't know if he's a rabbi, but he's certainly a scholar. And he actually grew up not religious. And what happened was, when he started to take a look at the Torah, he says, well, I got to make sure I get educated in what the Torah has to say before I could issue a judgment whether it's right or wrong. And so he's a scientist, so he began to do research. And the more research he did, the more he began to realize that, hey, this book is really very compelling, and I probably should become religious. And then I have to be religious because it's true. And that was sort of what he went through and how he went ahead and he did it. Then he became religious. So he was a scientist first, and then I think an astrophysicist.
So we're on to day 3, Rabbi?
I'm on to day number 3.
Verse number 9.
Chapter 1, verse number 9. What I'd like to do is I'd like to read through the day, the whole day number 3, then we'll go back and start from the top, and we'll stop you then.
Perfect. God said, let the waters beneath the heaven be gathered into one area, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and to the gathering of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, herbage yielding seed, fruit trees yielding fruit, each after its kind containing its own seed on the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth vegetation, herbage yielding seed of its kind, the trees yielding fruit, each containing its seed after its kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning on the 3rd day.
Excellent. Okay, so now let's start again, and I'll stop you along the way. Verse number 9.
God said, let the waters beneath the heavens be gathered into one area, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and to the gathering of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good.
Right here it says God saw that was good. This was the completion of the work that he started on day 2 of the waters and the earth. What's interesting, he calls it seas in the plural. But the question is, if all the waters of the seas are connected, so then why is it called seas in the plural? And Rashi brings down, he says, because they're called seas because the fish that you get in one area is not the same as the fish you get in another area. So, for example, if you ever go shopping, they'll sell you Pacific salmon or they'll sell you Atlantic salmon. Right? They're the same fish. Why do they taste differently? The answer is because the fish, the waters, right, is different, either composites, it's different temperatures, and therefore, at that point in time, so therefore, they're called different seas, even though they're all connected. And what's interesting, I don't know if you've ever been there, but if you take a look where the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean meet, south of South America, you'll see actually that they even look different, kind of the weirdest thing. And you see that as you could sail right over it, but actually the waters look differently. It's kind of like the coolest thing. I looked at that, it was just crazy, right? But that's because they're different salinities, different temperatures, and therefore they look different. Go ahead.
God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, herbage yielding seed, fruit trees yielding fruit, each of its kind, containing its own seed on the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth vegetation, herbage yielding seed after its kind, and trees yielding fruit, each containing its seed after its kind. And God saw that this was good.
So did the land listen to what God told it to do?
Well, one would think so.
So if you read in the Hebrew, God said that the tree itself should be a fruit, and it should produce a fruit. And it says when the land produced a tree, it produced a tree yielding fruit, but not that the tree itself tasted like a fruit. So it says a fruit tree bearing fruit is how it says in English, and it says a tree bearing fruit, so not a fruit tree.
So one area, and perhaps, Rabbi, you want me to hold this question to day 6, but it's always given me pause for reflection that we learn that Adam brought forth the vegetation and the fruit with his prayer, with the rain, and yet this seems to contradict that God created on day 3 the fruits and the vegetables. I'm confused.
Very good question. So I have 2 answers for that. Number 1 is that God did not, in the Garden of Eden, when God put Adam there was no trees. All the vegetation was underneath the ground. But in the millions and millions and millions of square miles in the rest of the world, where Adam was not, the trees could have been on day 3. That's my first thought. The second thought is that even in the Garden of Eden, when did God put those trees in its place? Or if it was in the whole world, where did God put the trees?
All over.
Right, but when did he put the trees in?
Well, he put them here on day 3.
So on day 3, he created those trees and vegetation. He just didn't have them sprout up, but they were created on day 3. Okay, but now comes a more fundamental question, right? The earth didn't listen to God. It really means the angel over the earth, right? But how could an angel disobey God? Right? That's a bigger problem, right? Because I thought angels had to be perfect, or you would have thought. And yet here somehow the angels didn't listen to God. So the idea here, and this question bothered me for many, many, many years. So one day I had the honor of my rabbi, Rabbi Tzvi Kushlevsky, who's in Israel. I studied there for almost 3 years. Big Torah scholar. And he was coming to Dallas, and I had the honor of driving him around. Now, the rule is when you have a great sage, you want to try to go ahead and to prepare as many questions as you can and just shut your mouth and just listen to what they have to say. You know, I kind of feel like pearls are just coming out of their mouth, and you have like a cup underneath their mouth just catching all the pearls as they come out. So what I did was I prepared some questions. And this is one of the questions I prepared. How could the land not listen to God? How could the angel not listen to God? And he told me a beautiful idea. And he said, man was going to be created from the dirt of the ground. And the essence of man is that we have free will. And we can make choices. And really our whole life is really a question of how we go ahead and how we exercise our free will. And so therefore, when it comes to exercising our free will, at that point in time, that's what makes us human. And if that's what makes us human, so now, since humans are created from the dirt, so now the dirt is the physical part of man. So the physical part of man also has to have a piece of free will. So therefore,
so you're saying the earth had free will to some extent.
So to speak, because it had to show that man that was going to be created from dirt.
Interesting.
So therefore, the physical part of us had the ability to make a free will decision.
Wow.
And I don't think he added the second part, but after I thought, so why specifically in the creation of trees? So there's a verse that says, Ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh, that man is the tree of the field. And so therefore, the trees represent man. So that's why specifically in the creation of the tree is where the earth flex its muscle, so to speak, of free will, and didn't do exactly what God told it to do. You know, and like this idea of the trees are the fruit of the trees of the field. Actually, it's interesting. I was in Colorado this past summer, and gorgeous. I was in the Rocky Mountains, and you see all these trees standing like tall, all reaching towards God. It's almost like an army of trees just standing at attention in front of God, sharing God's glory to the world. And so I just thought that was just cute that a man is a tree of the field. But that's why specifically here is the place where the land chose to show that it had free will. The dirt that it had free will was in the creation of the tree.
One other idea, Rabbi, that kind of, confused me a little bit is the repetition of each after its kind. That the fruit tree, each containing its seed after its kind. And I was thinking, how does that play into cross-pollination of fruits and trees?
Very interesting. We will see, as things get more sophisticated, right? Because we're going to go from trees, we're going to go to fish, we're going to go to birds, we're going to go to land animals, we're going to go to humans, that God keeps on repeating this theme, each according to its own kind. That God created everything the way it is, and we're not allowed to cross, right? We can't cross trees, right? A tangerine, right? I think is a cross between an orange and I don't know what other fruit. Whatever, you take a look, you go, now it's interesting, Jews are not allowed to create these crosses. And what happens is that, but we're allowed to eat it, we just can't create it. And we'll see this whole thing of kalayim. There's a commandment of not wearing mixtures of wool and linen. And we have animals, right? They have to go ahead, they have to stick to their own kind. And so what happens is, as it goes along, humans have to stick to their own kind. We don't do bestiality, right? And so it goes ahead and it says that there are different, I don't want to call it levels, or different categories. And each category needs to stick into its own kind. And we'll see that theme will be again and again and again repeated. We'll find it many times throughout the Torah.
It'll be interesting, Rabbi, when we get there, to engage a little bit in a conversation of multiple genders and cross
correct
activity once we get to that area.
Yeah, that will be very interesting. Go ahead. Let's just finish day number 3.
Let's see. And earth brought forth vegetation, herbage yielding seed after its kind, the trees yielding fruit, each containing its seed after its kind. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning on the 3rd day.
So again, right, and this wraps up day number 3. So day number 1 is light and dark, day and night. Day number 2 is water, upper waters, lower waters. Day number 3 is now waters being gathered together, earth sprouting, being brought forth dry land, and then all the coverage, right, on the land, right, herbs and trees. And that's day number 3. That's going to be important because we're going to see the order in which it's done, right? We're going from less sophisticated to more sophisticated.
So we haven't gotten to angels yet.
Angels were created already on day 2. Day 2, angels were created, right? And remember, we said that was why, right, the angels were created on day 2, because it comes to a point that on day 1, instead of saying Yom Rishon, the first day, it says Yom Echad, one day, right, or the day of one. Why is it called the day of one? So he said it's called the day of one because at that point in time, there was only one being in the world, and that was God. And that angels don't come about until day number 2.
Thank you.
Okay, and again, we said this before, but we'll just go ahead and repeat it. but that there was 3 things that were created every day. Day number 1 was heaven, earth, and light. Day number 2 was firmament, right, which we talked about, your firmament. Gehenna, which is hell, and angels. Day number 3 is trees, plant life, and Garden of Eden, which is interesting to your question, right? Right, that was a connection. Day 4 is going to be sun, moon, and constellations. Day 5 is going to be birds, fish, and Leviathan. Day number 6 is going to be man, woman, and creeping creatures, domestic animals, wild beasts, and harmful spirits. Remember, we have 6 things that are created in day number 6, because on Shabbat there was no creation that was done.
Great. Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, onward ho to day number 4.
Thank you, Rabbi. We're picking up on verse 23.
Go ahead.
And there was evening and there was morning, a 5th day.
Okay, so now we have finished days 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And next episode we're going to be doing day number 6, which will be creation of animals and man. So let's just recap what we covered today. So on day 1, heavens, earth, and light. That actually was a couple weeks ago. But today was day 2, which is the firmament, Gehenna or hell, or purgatory, and angels. Day 3 was trees, plant life, and Garden of Eden. Day 4 was sun, moon, and constellations. Day 5 was birds, fish, and Leviathan. And then day number 6, remember, we're going to have 6 things that we're going to get created on day number 6. Stay tuned for the next episode of Breakneck Through the Bible. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Tom, don't forget, it's all God, all the time.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Breakneck Through the Bible, as presented by Torch Dallas. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. For additional Torch podcasts and past episodes, please visit us at www.torchweb.org and click on podcasts. You can also visit us at www.torchdallas.net. This show was hosted by Rabbi Epstein, co-host by Tom Levine. Additional voiceover by Stephen Fellows. Sound recording and editing, Eitan Ayan. Co-producers, Eitan Ayan, Rabbi Epstein, and Stephen Fellows. Executive producer, Stephen Fellows. Marketing by Jared Leshin of Hypersway. Special thanks goes to Rabbi Arya Wolbe of Torch Houston. Tell your friends and help us grow. Please visit where you get your podcast and give us a rating. It's the best way to help people find us. This has been a production of Torch Dallas. Thank you, and we look forward to you joining us again for another episode of Breakneck Through the Bible.